Hi guys, and welcome back to the second episode of NIPS, so the new irregularly programmed show, or perhaps more appropriately the next irregularly programmed show. Either way, we're still having our NIPS. So on today's episode, I see you. Not one, not two, not three, but four awesome modelers, and we'll have a good look at each one of those, and you really do need to go and check them out. The Golden Oldie Supply Drop, and what are the purchases that I've made since last time around. Under the microscope, we'll have a look at an old classic. We'll have a look at what's on the bench. There's not actually all that much going on, but we'll cover off on three of the main ones in this segment. Helidonia, and the advancements made there in the development of the armour and some of the Air Force. And an extremely short segment on what did I do, because, well, basically I'm a lazy bugger and I've done nothing outside of what is covered in the other segments. And in this ICU segment, I have not three, but four awesome YouTube channels that you guys need to check out. So first up is Locked on Art, and I found this excellent channel only a short time ago and was lucky enough to start my addiction to watching all of the content by finding the second part of his Academy M4A3 Sherman Calliope, where he's doing the full build. The level of detail in some of the sub-assemblies that he makes is amazing, and the methodical and craftsman-like way he goes about the work is simply awesome. It's some of the best detailed scratch building. I've really never seen anything better than it, to be honest. And it's an excellent example of just great modelling skills. Well worth taking the time to go and check the channel out as soon as you can. And the second one up is Barbarossa 641. Now, this guy is brilliant, and the dio that really caught my attention is his current build, Ghosts of the Past, the diorama, and it's the part 1. The concept is quite different, and I really love the idea, not to mention the fact that the initial work is just super impressive. The idea he has is to blend the past with the present, and he's using figures from both the World War II era and modern day, and each painted to correspond with its own time period. So the modern day figures will be in colour and the World War II parts will be in black and white. It's a really awesome idea, and I'm so looking forward to seeing how the dio develops, so check this channel out. You won't regret having a look at it for 1 second. CW Modelling. Now, this is a channel that you have to go and check out. Ian is an exceptional modeller, and the current project that he has just finished, Fallback from Falaise, I think that's how you say it, Falaise, perhaps? Either way, it's fantastic. A combination of really great kit building skills and storytelling, but the thing that really got my attention was the scratch built building, which is just brilliant. What I really like about it is that it's largely done with materials that we all have relatively easy access to, so it wouldn't be all that expensive to pull the components together. The challenge, of course, is to develop the same high levels of skill that Ian possesses, so this is an absolute must go to and have a look at. You certainly won't regret it. And lucky last, Philes Bassionisis, and gosh, I apologise if I've got that wrong, and I most certainly have. Philis's video is the reveal of his completed Dragon Panzer IV Ostsee, And oh wow, I mean, let me just say that again. Oh wow, this is just a brilliant build of what I would think would probably be a pretty much favourite kit for many of us. And it's just wonderful with the addition of some excellent aftermarket, which really comes through in the post-painted product. But it is the painting and the weathering which is breathtaking. Fearless is really a wonderful artist, and this piece is no exception. It's a great piece of work and something that I am confident everyone will love. And the good news is this is only part 2 of the project, and I'm sure that there are at least 2 more to come, because he said he was making a plane tree in part 4. Check it out, guys. It is brilliant. So let's get the box open. Just a small order, a few things I need for the next project, and 1 or 2 other bits and bobs. So what's first out of the box is a little bit of chain. I don't really have a need for this, but well, you can never have too much chain lying around, and that's helpful. These are some decals for the dash and other bits and bobs for the Kübelwagen, which will be part of the next project as well. I picked up some 0.2mm plastic card, and I have a thought for that that I might use in this dio, which I'll explain in a second. The Kübelwagen Type 82 from Tamiya, one I built many years ago, I think around the same time as I built the 88 in fact, so bringing history back together again with those 2 kits in the next project. And then some German artillery crew from Miniart. So I know the Tamiya 88 comes with crew, but I just want to mix it up a little bit and have some variance in the uniforms that are on display. And finally is a leaf maker, and this is the birch leaf. And this will also figure in the dio that I'm about to build. So we'll start with the Kübelwagen, and I bought this in particular because the next dio I do will be the German 88mm gun, and I want just another vehicle accompanying it with the crew. So I always like the look of the Kübelwagen. I think they're a nice looking vehicle, and I want an easy build as well. So I thought Tamiya gun, Tamiya car, and that will suit me down to the ground. So we've got the box art with the nice camouflage scheme there. I'm really not sure what I'll do with the camouflage. Late war, probably a whole lot of disparate units pulled together in certain instances. So I don't know, I might do something a bit unusual. I'll have to do a little bit more research. The same camouflage pattern on the one long end of the box, and then the stock standard grey on the other end of the box. And if we have a look inside the box, we've got 2 packets of sprues, the instructions and the decals. So obviously you can't see anything of the decals here, but we'll come back to those when I actually open them, which would be much more use. Standard Tamiya instructions, a picture, a little bit of a blurb about the vehicle. Let's just see how many stages there are. I think we've got 13 stages. So that should keep me out of mischief for a little while. We'll open the plastic later on, but we've got some nice looking seat details. Got the clear plastic there for the windows, I would imagine. And the lower chassis there, the sides, wheels, all the stuff you need to make a car. Just have a closer look at the individual sprues and the decals, etc. It's all very crisply moulded. The figure looks really good, nice and clean. No flash, of course. The clear part is very clear. And the decals, which look really nice, very fine and all in registry. And yeah, as I said, I'm not sure what I'll do yet. Next we have the German artillery crew from Miniart.
And again, I just wanted a few different figures. I'll probably use the 4 guys that are carrying the ammunition cases. I think they'll be alright. I'm not too sure I'll use the officer. He looks a bit like a knob standing like that. And who wears jodhpurs anymore? Well, I mean, they did then, but really. I always go into a mini art figure kit with a bit of a mixed emotion. Never really entirely sure what you get. So the instructions are pretty basic. It's a sprue map and then how to build the boxes. Every sprue, and there's 4 of them, is shoved into one bag, which I'm not a huge lover of, but then by the same token you never really get much damage. So 4 of the boxes sprues, and then you've got 2, so in fact there's 6 in total, and then you've got the figures. So there is a little bit of flash, but it's around the sprue itself, not on the actual figures, so it's not too bad. And I'll just bundle all the other stuff up together. So we've got the railway and armouring scale chains, and look, they look really nice. It says on the little package they don't require painting, but I think you'd probably need to. Then we've got the Alliance Model Works decals for the Kubelwagen, and they look quite nice, very, very small. And then the leaf maker in the birch pattern, and I just did a couple here with the paper that was in the box, just to have a quick look at it. And it's not good paper, so it had pretty raggedy edges. But I have just done some with some leaves, which coincidentally I think are from birch trees from my front yard. I think they're silver birches, so they don't look too bad. The big ones are too big for 1/35th scale. Otherwise, I think the other 2 will work well. And for where the gun's situated at the edge of the forest, firing up at Castle Itter, I just want a lot of leaf litter on the ground, have it look really foresty.
So we're going to put Tamiya's 88mm gun, Flak 36-37, under the microscope today, and have a good old look at the box and the instructions and also the sprues. So this is Tamiya's kit, item number 35017. Now, according to the Scalemates timeline, this kit had an initial release date of 1972. I think I would probably have purchased this when I was about 12, so in about perhaps 1975. So for its time then, a reasonably new kit. In 1998, they say it had a reboxing to the current artwork of the one that I'm showing here. And then finally it was re-released with updated and new parts in 2006 under the North African Campaign banner. Now, the one that I am looking at now, and as you'll see in the next few pictures, certainly has some new parts from when I built it back in 1975. So I'm not sure if that was also done in 1998. But I'm not a historical expert on the configuration of kits. And this is a picture of the first release box art, so very similar to the one that I've got now, just a little bit of difference in the colour that is being used. So I can remember vividly the day that I bought this. This is the first kit that I ever paid for with my own saved up pocket money, and I remember we were in a strip shopping centre on the way to visit my grandfather with Mum, and it was a newsagent, so I'm not sure if newsagents exist outside of Australia. I think they're probably similar things. I think there's newsstands in the US. I'm not sure there's whole stores devoted to the sale of newspapers and magazines, but they're a bit of a dying breed here now too, but they used to be quite prominent in my youth, and they had everything in them. You could buy bicycles in them, you could buy papers and magazines and model kits in particular, and all the paints and things like that. So I remember going into one of the more regularly frequented news agencies that I used to haunt and finding this kit and just falling in love with the box art. I think it just looked really dynamic and it captured my imagination straight away. So I remember buying the kit with my own money and some glue, and that was about it, I think. And then we went to my grandfather's place and I immediately started building it on his kitchen table using a pair of nail scissors and a nail file. The only tools that I had, and I think it would have been tube glue, and I think it might have just been the FX tube glue, and no doubt just smothering the thing in glue and not cleaning up the sprue marks and all that sort of stuff. So it would have been horrendous, I'm sure. But no, I had a lot of fun doing it, and I am going to, while I'm doing the build, go on the hunt through my old boxes that live in the shed in the garage, because I am hopeful that I might still have a couple of the figures floating around somewhere. I don't think any of the gun would have survived, but I might be able to pull a couple of the figures out. It'd be nice to recycle those in the new Dio. So first up, we'll have a quick flick through the instructions. So typical Tamiya instructions, these are in the booklet form rather than the fold-out stuff, which I much prefer. So I think it's just easier to keep organised on the bench if it's in a booklet form. The normal starting of a Tamiya set of instructions, a little bit of historical information about the gun itself. I'm not going to go into that a lot now. I will go into it more when I release the first build video of the kit, but some nice black and white pictures, which we'll have a look at here, and there's plenty of pictures online as well. I haven't actually got a book dedicated to it. I've got a couple of different books which have various pictures of it. One of the things I've been noticing, and you guys can help me out a lot, is there does seem to be a number of pictures where it's firing and it's still mounted on the bogies, and that sort of captures my imagination a little bit because I think that would look a bit cool. But I'm not sure if it's a thing or not. So if anyone does know if it's appropriate, I mean, I'm not a historical accuracy nut, but if they never ever fired while they were still mounted to the bogies, I'm not all that keen to build it like that. But if that's a thing that they did do, I'm sort of tempted to do it like that. But anyway, if someone can give me a tip, that would be really helpful. And then the instructions go through, and there's just some photos of them here. You can stop and zoom in if you feel that way inclined. But there's quite a few pages, very detailed, goes through all the steps and some nice photos of what the finished components should look like, or sub-assembly should look like, the normal painting and decal instructions, and then when we get to the very back page, the old black and white advertising. I remember I used to pore over that and think, oh wow, I want all of those, and try and figure out what I was going to save up for next. So this kit for me, I don't know why, but it's really triggering a high level of nostalgia, and as I might have said in the earlier segment, I've already started the build. You'll see a little bit of that in the What's on the Bench in this episode, and loving it, really, really enjoying it. So next we've got the decals, and they're excellent. And again, as I remember them, the little badges for the helmets, and I used all of those on various different figures over the journey, and I think they look really cool, so I won't overuse them because I don't think everyone's helmet would have been uniform by the end of the war, but a few of them will get a Guernsey. They're in good registry, they're nice and crisp. I always like Tamiya decals. I'm not one of the people who has an issue with them, so looking forward to getting some of those down. I don't think any of those symbols represent the unit that was actually attacking Castle Itta, but I think I'll be able to get those. I'm sure that archers have a set that have the right tactical symbols, so I'll have to order those fairly quickly. So the other bits all get dropped in together, and there's a couple of screws with a couple of nuts, and that's certainly new from when I built it. And I think that's got to keep the two side elevations together, but allow it to still have movement. I've had a quick glance at the instructions, but nothing in detail. And the other thing that it comes with is this plastic hose, which is wrapped around the spools. Now I remember the plastic hose wasn't in the kit when I was a kid. And I remember Mum going to the hardware store and coming back with stuff that was about 4 times the size of the stuff that's included here. And it was a bright green, and I thought it was fantastic. And I'm a bit embarrassed to think that I actually wrapped that around probably once because it would have been so fat it wouldn't have gone around twice. So I'm glad that this comes with the right scale rubber hose. Again, I'm no expert in 88s. I don't even really know what this is meant to represent, whether it's cable for communication, is it the phone system, or is it something to do with the fuel? I've actually got no idea. So again, lovely subscribers, if anyone can set me straight, I would much appreciate it. And also the Tamiya rubber wheels, they look quite nice, and again, a lot of people don't seem to like the rubber wheels. They don't faze me. I think they're fine, and I know there's issues about them perishing over time, but we all perish over time, so I'm not too fussed about that. I think it's all good. Now, I couldn't get a German translation for the sprues, so I hope I haven't said anything rude there, but I went for the plastic frames that hold the parts. I'm sure I'll be corrected, and I look forward to it if it's wrong, and I'd love to know what I've said if it's stupid. And look, I think I've talked at you enough now, way too much really. So just some still pictures now of the various close-ups of the sprues, and all in all I can say is it's a Tamiya kit. Great details, no flash, really looking forward to building it. I'm imagining the scene now, but it's not quite clear in my head, but really enjoying the little bit that I've done so far. So sit back and enjoy, see if I can find some decent music to put in the background, and we'll see you in the next segment. Now, there's a few things that have been happening in the Haladonian Armed Forces, and the first thing we'll look at is the Armoured Support Services. Yes, the ARSs. And these are the guys who look after the tanks in the field and provide security and support for them. So let's have a look at the first couple of vehicles, which are the Jeeps. So you might remember these Jeeps from the previous NIPs, and I've built 6 of them, and I've now finished painting 2 of them. Really tiny. I didn't even bother to try and film it in too much detail. I've got some footage. I might put something together later on. I'm not sure if it'll be of huge interest to many people, to be honest, but very happy with how they finished off. Incredibly tiny, but I think they look pretty good. Just test fitting some of the figures here, and they're sort of a bit of cannibalized from a couple of different little kits, and in all honesty I can't remember which ones because I pulled them all out and I got them all mixed up. So but the upper body of 176 scale kits like Airfix or Revell, and the bottom half is from a truck kit with passengers in the back that I'll probably never use, so they were the bottom halves for the seating purposes. So this is basically how the Jeeps have turned out. So this is the one of the figures that comes with the truck, and that is the top half of, I think, a Revell Vietnam era US soldier. As usual, the excavation in the anal area for mounting purposes. And then just a little bit of vision here about glued them together with super glue and pinned all the way through so they don't come apart. This soft plastic is notoriously difficult to hold paint, so it was pretty thorough, and you know, maybe over thorough because it's not like I'll be playing with them, they're just for display, but in undercoating them and then putting a clear coat over that and then painting them and then putting a gloss coat over that, weathering them and then putting a clear coat over that. So arguably overkill, but I don't want to have to go back and ever touch them up or do them again. So, and really, in terms of time elapsed, it wasn't that terrible. So, just a few pictures here of the various stages of that process. I actually drilled the barrel out on that guy's rifle, which impressed me no end. I also put 2 holes in my thumb in the exercise, but that's the price you pay. So this is them now with the gloss coat on prior to weathering. Just a few little bits of detail added, which don't look as stark when we get to the weathering completion and then the dull coat. Yeah, look, for the size they are and the level of effort I want to put in, I'm pretty happy. And here's just a few shots of them finished. So, yeah, look, I was really pleased with the way they came up, and sort of hard to replicate my Haladonian colour scheme in such a small scale, but I think a little bit of it came through, and just sort of repurposed some of the decals from the original 4 tanks, all in the first Armoured as the ARS support for the tanks, so the Armoured Support Services, and this will ultimately grow into, I guess, the headquarters company for the 1st Armoured Division, I would imagine. So anyway, they all look pretty nice together on the Dio base, so happy about that. So the other thing I've hopped into is the Royal Haladonian Air Force, and I've shown you previously, I think, in a supply drop, the 144th, the 100, the really little planes. So I thought I have a Dio idea for that, and I want to sort of be a little bit dynamic. So just going through the process here of completing the first one of the MiG-21s and thinking about colour schemes while I'm doing it. But all I've really done is paint the interior, and so far progress to date, I guess it's probably 60% completed. A lot of detail in the cabin surprised me for its size, so I was pretty happy with that. I think hopefully will be an interesting Dio. The building of the planes, there'll be 4 BF-109s and 2 of the Haladonian jets, and I want to make it very dynamic. So that's all I'll say at this stage. We'll see how that comes out. And I think in some earlier chats or feedback from earlier videos, talked about what I should do from a colour scheme perspective, and so the couple of pin-up girls in the title page are a bit of a clue to what might be a consistent theme in tail art for the Haladonian Air Force, and I'm hoping I can carry that theme through all of the Air Force aircraft. Now the armed forces will have some aircraft as well, and they'll be based on the Harrier, and they might have a much more heavily camouflaged colour scheme. But I think I wanted a little bit of pizzazz in the actual Haladonian Air Force, so there's a bit of a clue to what that might look like in its finished state. And last of all, for this segment for Haladonia, will be the armoured vehicle that forms part of the Armoured Support Services, and this is where the security team will be involved, so that this will be the transport for the security team, which will probably be a combination of a couple of machine guns and rifle troops and maybe a couple of bazookas. Haven't quite got it clear. I've got plenty of options. I've got dozens and dozens and dozens of figures that I can draw from. So the platoon of 4 tanks will be supported by the 2 Jeeps, largely recon, this GTK Boxster, it's not a Porsche, Boxer, which will contain the ARSs, so the Armoured Support Services boys. And then there'll be one final vehicle to come, which I thought I had, but I can't find it, and I doubt that I've actually lost it, so maybe I never had it, which will be the company headquarters command vehicle as well. And that will sort of finish off at this stage the 1st Armoured Division, and I want to move then more fully into the Air Force in 1/72nd scale, so finish the 144th Dio and then do a couple of the 1/72nd scale MiG-21s. So we'll kick off what's on the bench. I think we've got 3 main things to look at. So one will be the 88mm flak gun, anti-tank gun, which I've done a little bit of work on, probably the first part of the assembly, so still a fair way to go, but shaping up nicely. The other thing we'll have a look at will be the good old 1/16th scale French Cuirassier, where I have made somewhat slow progress, I have to admit, but it's getting there, so I've done a bit more work on the horse there. I won't dwell on that overly long. And the other thing we'll look at briefly will be the Matilda, which again I've made some minor progress on, but I've got a bit of a clearer idea on what I'm going to do with it now, and I'll talk about that very briefly when I just show a few updated pictures, so this won't be an overly long segment. So started with a blaze of glory on the 88mm. That sort of petered off a little bit, just lots of stuff happening in real life. But I think I got the first 4 assemblies done before I got off track a little bit. So my only comment would be that it's an old kit, and I know there's probably been a retooling, and I talk about that in more detail. That was just after I did the unboxing and talked about the parts and all that sort of stuff. What I found in the building is that it's not a modern Tamiya kit, so the fit isn't, our typical comment about, well, what can you expect? It's Tamiya, so it just falls together. It falls together, yeah, but there's a little bit of flash and there's a little bit of gaps in some of the joins. None of it's a big deal, but it's sort of like you're so used to Tamiya just going together without any effort at all, that the fact that you have to do a little bit of filing and scraping is a bit surprising. But enjoying it, it's going together, it's fun to do, and I will get back into the saddle hopefully in the next few days and really break the back of it. And to be truthful, the work on the French Cuirassier has mainly been on the horse. So I'd got down all the main colours and done a little bit of work in shading with the acrylic paints using the Vallejo. And the next thing that I've done since you might have last caught a glimpse of this was to give it a dull coat. And the reason I did that is that what I'm now working on is doing a little bit of, dot filtering with oils and shading, and being, very careful just to break up, because it's not that you're ever going to have a perfectly all-white horse, but I don't want to sort of have a bizarrely mottled horse either. So I'm just taking my time and being careful, and you can see some of the areas there more along the rear and the flank, where that's, I think, making a difference and making it look a little bit more realistic. So yeah, it's really my pickup thing when I'm at a point where I'm stuck waiting for stuff to dry and almost I've got nothing else to do, and even the option of going and sitting on the couch and doing nothing is not as appealing as doing a little bit of this. So I'm really struggling through it, but I want to get it finished, and I'm sure I'll be happy with it when it's done. Just got to get there. And last and probably least is Matilda. So pretty much finished the lower hull, which is been quite easy to put together. It's just that prioritization and time. But while I've been tinkering with that and looking online and reading different bits and bobs about the Australian Army's use of armour in World War II, I was probably initially leaning towards a Western Desert diorama, but I think I'm going to jump direction and go for a jungle, well, not quite jungle, but a Japanese front diorama. So there's a couple of interesting stories that I've been reading about the Australians' first use of tanks in that theatre, and interestingly how the troops reacted to them in the first instance, which wasn't overly positive, and then how they came to regard them after their experience with them in combat, which was far more valuable than I think anyone ever imagined. So that sort of partly jungle but partly open fields. I've got some pictures from that theatre that show that sort of terrain, so I just need to have to think about how I replicate that. And in doing so, because when you look at the pictures, it doesn't really look like it's in the jungle anyway, and not all of the theatre was heavily jungled. So I just have to work my way through that. But again, enjoying the build, and I think I'll gather a little bit of momentum in the not too distant future.
What did you do? What did you do? What did you do this morning?
So that's it, guys, and just take this opportunity to thank you for watching and taking the time to do so. Like if you like, sub if you're not already subbed. Look, the nips is really for subscribers. I don't think the search algorithms will put it in front of too many people who aren't already aware of the channel. So I really designed the episode based around the fact that you're subscribers and you know what's going on. I don't do a lot of pre-explanation or historical explanation about things. If you've stumbled onto it, welcome. If none of it makes sense or you think I'm a lunatic, you're probably right. But feel free to whack some comments down the bottom. Everyone knows I love them. I will respond. Otherwise, take care. I will catch you on the next one, which will almost certainly be the build of the German 88mm gun. Take care all. Cheers.